Vaux-le-Vicomte is more than a chateau. It is a lesson in ego, beauty, and the dangers of flexing too hard in front of royalty. This is the place that was the inspiration for the Palace of Versailles, but it also cost the man who built it everything, including his life. Located just an hour southeast of Paris, Château de Vaux-le-Vicomte is the kind of place that screams elegance, but with an undercurrent of unease. And that's because it isn't a royal chateau. How could something so beautiful and expensive looking have been built by a mere nobleman? And more importantly, where did he get the money? It was this question that would enrage the Sun King Louis XIV so much he threw its owner in jail. And along with the king's anger, it was the beauty of the chateau that inspired the king's determination to build something that would outshine it, the stunning Palace of Versailles. This was one of the biggest scandals in French architectural history. The chateau was the brainchild of a man named Nicolas Fouquet, the Marquis de Belle-Île. Fouquet became the finance minister to Louis XIV in the 1600s. Think of him as the CFO of France's royal budget, and also the guy who maybe liked to dip into the company accounts. The Sun King had become king at the mere age of 5 after the death of his father. Nicolas Fouquet had been made Minister of Finance while the king was still a child under the regency of his mother. But when he reached adulthood, the Sun King was itching to show that he was the boss now. Having been so close to the throne for so long, Fouquet did not realize this and started to get careless. Using lands inherited by his wife, he decided to build a grand new chateau to show off his wealth and status, and of course his proximity to the king. To build Vaux-le-Vicomte, Fouquet hired the best of the best, architect Louis Le Vaux, landscape designer André Le Nôtre, and the painter Charles Le Brun. This dream team would later go on to build the Château de Versailles, but Vaux-le-Vicomte was their first masterpiece. The collaboration was a success. The castle was completed in 1661, a mere 6 years after construction began. To celebrate, Fouquet decided to throw a big party, probably one of the worst ideas ever in the history of parties. On August 17, 1661, Fouquet threw his party of the century to show off his shiny new castle to Louis XIV and the royal court. Think fireworks, gourmet banquets, plays by Molière, and enough gold leaf to blind your enemies. This would lead to an unexpected reaction. Instead of being impressed, Louis XIV had a look around and erupted in fury. To him, either Fouquet was flaunting his wealth or he was stealing from him. The French author Voltaire later wrote, "On August 17th at 6 p.m. in the evening, Fouquet was the king of France. At 2 a.m. in the morning, he was a nobody." Louis set his trap. Fouquet was arrested 3 weeks later for embezzlement. He was imprisoned for life and his wife exiled. The young king's action after that fateful night would consolidate his power on the French throne, with his nobles now fearful of his wrath. King Louis XIV would become an absolute monarch, known as the Sun King, with everything revolving around him. The Château de Vaux-le-Vicomte was sequestered, and Louis raided it for many of its riches. Madame Fouquet did recover her chateau 10 years later and retired there with her son. But in 1705, after the death of her husband and her son, she decided to put Vaux-le-Vicomte up for sale. She and her children never got to enjoy the status that Nicolas Fouquet had sought after and fought so hard for. Let this be a lesson. Don't try to outshine a king. While Fouquet spent the rest of his days in prison, Louis XIV meanwhile had a look at his architectural team. Using the same winning combo of Le Vaux, Le Nôtre, and Le Brun, he asked them to build something bigger and better, and they did. If Vaux-le-Vicomte was the dress rehearsal, the Palace of Versailles was going to be the big theatrical premiere. And that's because when it comes to French architectural design, Vaux-le-Vicomte at the time was revolutionary. The central dome over the Grand Salon, a brand new concept in France. The perfectly symmetrical French formal gardens stretching to the horizon. Le Nôtre's genius at work. There are perspective tricks here, where things appear closer or larger than they are, all to create the illusion of endless grandeur. It was not just landscaping, it was psychological manipulation to tug at the heartstrings. Which shrubbery, that is. The chateau sits on a large moated platform, although the moat was purely for aesthetic purposes. The rest of the extravagant chateau features elaborate moldings and decorations, rather than anything that can serve for a defensive purpose. Inside the chateau, Lebrun pulled out all the stops. Murals dressed in mythology, gold leaf everywhere, secret messages about Fouquet's loyalty to the king, which clearly didn't work. After the Fouquet family sold it, it remained in private hands. Even during the 1789 French Revolution, when many nobles lost their estates and their heads, Vaux-le-Vicomte was relatively unscathed. In 1875, it was bought by the Sommier de Vogüé family at auction, and it is now owned by their descendants, the Count and Countess of Vogüé. Today, the rooms are restored and filled with period furniture and art, but they also feel lived in because there is a family living here. You can visit during the day or come for a candlelight evening. 2,000 candles glow throughout the chateau and gardens on special occasions. There are also seasonal events for Easter and Christmas, a carriage museum, costumes to try on, and even a restaurant where you can eat like a 17th century aristocrat. Hopefully with less political fallout. While Nicolas Fouquet and his family paid a steep price for all this exquisite luxury, his name will forever be engraved in the architectural history of France and the Château de Vaux-le-Vicomte. For more information on how to get to Vaux-le-Vicomte, there is a link in the description to my website for more details about visiting the chateau from Paris. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more stories from France and beyond. Thanks for watching. À bientôt.